Hello and welcome to another episode of The Mark Medley Show. And I actually have not come to you all in a good while now, at least in this format. So I am thrilled to be releasing another episode of The Mark Medley Show. Tonight is a banner night because not only am I releasing an episode of The Mark Medley Show, I released 2 episodes of The Reading Circle with Mark Medley. Both are on my YouTube channel. It was the episode with Chandra Sparks Blonde. And then this past Saturday was Brant Menswar. So both of those episodes was released. Plus, I'm releasing this episode of The Mark Medley Show. And today's episode is titled, I'm Speaking. The cornerstone or the impetus for this show, of course, would be those words that were said by Senator Kamala Harris in the debate between she and Vice President Mike Pence. And the reason I'm recording this one is because I can feel and understand exactly what Senator Harris was saying when she says, I'm speaking. And she looked over at Mike Pence and she looked at him and smiled and said, I'm speaking. And I can tell you now, there are few things that aggravate me more than someone cutting into my conversation when I'm talking. And what makes it worse is you give the other person an opportunity to get his or her thought totally out. And then when it's time for you to get your thought out, he or she wants to dismiss it as if what you're saying is not valid or doesn't matter. And that's what was going on in that debate. Mike Pence would get his thought out. As a matter of fact, he would go overtime. And then when it was time for Kamala Harris to get her thought out, he would now want to cut in. So she had to say, I'm speaking. And see, many said because of her facial expression and her tone of voice that it was as if women cornered the market on being able to say, I'm speaking. But I'm here to tell you, but the same holds true for men as well. No more than a woman wants to be interrupted when she's speaking, does a man want to be interrupted when he's speaking. For me, that's just straight up rude. That's just straight up disrespectful. That when someone has given you an opportunity to express yourself, and then it's time for the other person, for he or her to express him or herself, now you want to cut in and dismiss what they're saying or either overtalk them and start talking about your point again. That is a major league pet peeve for me. You want to aggravate me? You want to watch me go from 0 to 60 real quick, from 0 to 100 real quick? Cut into my conversation, particularly after I've allowed you to have your say. And for me, it doesn't matter if it's spouse, sister, mother, father, cousin, uncle, grandma. It doesn't matter. It's rude. So I understood exactly where Kamala Harris was coming from because Joe Biden had gone through the same thing the week prior with the president, except for it was to the second or third power from Donald Trump. Joe Biden really couldn't get a word in edgewise because every time he would now try to make his point, Donald Trump would jump in to the point where Joe Biden had to say, oh, will you just shut up, man? And I understand that feeling and could feel that as well, because that's exactly the type of frustration that you get when you're constantly trying to get your message out and someone keeps cutting across it. Someone keeps stomping on it as if what you say doesn't matter. That's the issue. That's the problem that I have with it, because that's really what it's saying is that I don't care what you say. It's all about what I say. That's really what that's saying. That's really what it says. I don't care what you feel. It only matters what I feel. So therefore, I'm going to dismiss what you're saying and say what I want to say. So for me, absolute major league frustration will actually tee me off more than you could possibly imagine. So I could feel Kamala Harris's pain when she looked at him, and she did it in such a way, I mean, that look on her face, and then the smile, and she repeated it. I'm speaking. Mr. Vice President, I'm speaking. In other words, you're not going to overtalk me. And I don't blame her for that. I didn't blame her one iota for that, because I would have done the same. As a matter of fact, in my mind, the moderator should have stepped in both cases. The moderator in the presidential debate and the moderator in the vice presidential debate. Had that been me, unless they are not allowed to do that, unless they're prohibited from doing it, I would have stood up. And I would have let both Donald Trump and Mike Pence know, you do that one more time, the debate's over. Now, I don't know, maybe within the rules they can't do that. Maybe the moderator can't do that. But just saying, thank you, Mr. Vice President. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Vice President. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. President. Thank you, Mr. Vice President. Thank you. That was doing absolutely nothing. They were totally disregarding the fact that the moderator was trying to get them to stay within their time frames. They had agreed to the rules prior to the debate, whether it was 2 minutes here, 30 seconds there, 15 seconds there. At the end of your time, you are to be quiet. You are to shut down. You are to stop commenting. But if you notice in both cases, in terms of Trump and Pence, they both were just going to have their way regardless. So it just seems like to me the moderator could have got on his or her feet and could have said, I said your time is up. The same way that Kamala Harris had that tone of, I'm speaking. The moderator should have been able to stand up and say, you're no longer speaking, you're done. It's time for the other person to have his or her turn. But no, they were going to keep speaking regardless. So this is my first podcast episode in a little while. And again, I wanted to kind of strike while the iron was hot. The I'm speaking iron was hot. And just give a little word of advice to folks that if you're having a conversation with someone, by all means, make your point. But then when it's time for the other person to make his or her point, allow that, because that really does send a message of, I don't want to hear what you have to say. What you have to say doesn't matter. I don't care about what your thought is, because your thought or your feelings don't matter. Only my thoughts or only my feelings matter. So therefore, when you start talking, I'm going to overtalk you, or I'm going to shut you down and not allow you to speak, because only what I say matters. That's the message that sends. And I, for one, like Kamala, don't take too kindly to that message, because if I'd allowed you to get your point out, then my expectation is that I'm going to be able to get my point out. Not that in the middle of me trying to get my point out, you're just going to keep overriding. You're just going to keep dismissing. You're just going to keep cutting in. That doesn't work. It doesn't work in the home. It doesn't work on the debate stage. So it's good to be back with everybody. I truly enjoyed watching Kamala say, I'm speaking. Give him that look and that smile. And I'm sure he knew exactly what that meant, even though he still kind of did his own thing, but he knew what she was saying. He knew what she meant. Didn't blame her a bit. I will not allow anyone to overtalk me either. Again, it doesn't matter who. Doesn't matter the relationship. I am not going to stand and allow someone to cut me off, to overtalk me, particularly whenever I've given them the courtesy of having his or her say. Hopefully, you're not one who does that. And if you are, If you've listened to this podcast, it'll give you some food for thought. If you want to know a little bit more about me, feel free to visit my website, markamedley.com. There's a whole lot of links in there you can click on and learn more about me. You can hear me live on Saturday mornings in my radio show, The Reading Circle with Mark Medley, where I have thought-provoking guests who've written books, and they have an opportunity to share their work. And I also switch over into the gospel music format. So that's on Saturday mornings from 6 o'clock a.m. to 9 o'clock a.m. Eastern Time on gobrave.org, GOBRAVE.org. If you're in the northern New Jersey area, it's 88.7 FM radio. And we're also on the TuneIn radio network. Again, if you go into TuneIn in the search bar, if you put in the letters WPSC, it should bring up Brave New Radio. And you can listen to the show there. Well, that's about it for this episode. Again, I'm speaking. If you are a Frasier fan, that sitcom that came on years ago with Kelsey Grammer, his tagline was, I'm listening. Well, Kamala Harris's tagline is going to be, I'm speaking. And I could not concur with her more. We'll be together again on the next episode of The Mark Medley Show.